Welcome to Wyoming's edition of Earth Day Live, a virtual celebration of the 50th anniversary of the first Earth Day, and a call to action on the climate crisis, the existential threat that we all must face with courage and determination in order to assure a healthy future for the planet we call home. This event is brought to you by the Sierra Club, Wyoming chapter, and by Wyoming climate activists. My name is Mike Selmer, a founder of WCA, and I will be your host for this exciting event. First, I would like to thank everyone who helped organize or who is participating in this afternoon's presentation, with special thanks to Rob Joyce, the Laramie chapter organizer for the Sierra Club. I hope that you will all be informed, entertained, and motivated by the people on our virtual stage. They care deeply about this important issue. Please share this live stream with your friends and family through your preferred social media. We have a lineup that includes both high school and university speakers, a virtual town hall with community leaders from around the state, and a special performance by Jay Shogren. And first up is Layla Johnson and Rebecca Lyford from Laramie High School.
Hi, I'm Layla Johnson. I'm a junior at Laramie High School. Today, my friend Rebecca and I will be talking to you about youth involvement and activism.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Lyford, and I am also a junior at Laramie High School. I am glad to be here today with you to work together against climate change. Youth have a history of being involved in important issues, and this climate crisis is no different. Our fight to protect this earth is a means to protect our future and the futures of the generations to come. Many national and worldwide actions have been taken to secure the health of our planet, and the youth of the world have already made a great impact.
Greta Thunberg is one of the most influential youth leaders in the climate crisis. Her movement was started by her protest outside of the Swedish parliament. She sat outside their building every school day for 3 weeks to call for strong action against climate change. Her famous sign, School Strike for Climate, has inspired many young people to join the fight against climate change. Together, they created the Fridays for Future movement, a school strike movement for students around the world to come together. Greta completed her tour around North America, which has inspired many more young people to follow in her footsteps. They've been leading and organizing in their own communities, and Greta has been the face of the Fridays for Future campaign, and for many young people, the face of the entire fight against climate change.
Another impactful action group empowered by youth is the Sunrise Movement. This is an American youth-led movement that advocates political action on climate change. First established in 2017, these powerful youth voices had originally worked to elect representatives who supported renewable energy in their platforms in the 2018 election. After the election, the organization had been focused on gaining a consensus with the Democratic Party in support of an environmental program known as the Green New Deal. This New Deal combines President Franklin Roosevelt's economic approach while incorporating ideas on renewable energy and resource efficiency. The deal calls for a national mobilization to halt the changing climate, the creation of 20 million jobs by transitioning to 100% clean renewable energy, redirecting research funds from fossil fuels into renewable resources, and more. The makers of the Green New Deal are currently fighting for a new piece of legislation, the American Climate Contract, which they hope will lay a foundation for a bipartisan fight against climate change. The young people of this movement have pushed for a great change in our democracy and have become role models for us all.
These movements have inspired us to take action in our own community. In Laramie, there are many different groups who have joined the fight against climate change, which shows that what is most important is us coming together. The Laramie Youth Council has taken on many projects to help our community and the environment. This year, the idea of implementing a fee on plastic bags in Laramie was brought to the council, and we decided to take on the challenge and fight our plastic pollution. We met with city council members frequently. It was a long process to figure out our plan and inform ourselves on the topic. After many weeks of researching effective methods from cities around the world, we formulated our plan. When we presented to the city council, our plan was brought with an overwhelmingly positive response, and a beginning step was passed. Another project that we took on this year involved reducing our carbon emissions. The Youth Council is currently working towards getting solar panels on our Laramie High School building, a project mainly led by Sam and Aru, 2 Youth Council members. This project, like many others, is experiencing delays, and we haven't given up on our cause, and I encourage many of you who are in similar situations to not give up and stay persistent.
Even the general youth of Laramie have empowered the community in its fight against climate change. At many of the Laramie climate strikes that took place in the last year, students attended with the consequence of missing school to show their support for this cause. These actions are extremely important in the fight against climate change because the youth of this world is what is going to push for and receive the most change in our government. We are the ones most affected by this crisis, as it is our futures and lives at risk if we do not address and solve this issue. Many students have even taken the initiative to be leaders in these fights, as shown by my amazing friend Layla here, and many others who have contributed a lot of hard work and time to this cause. We are the hope for the future, and we will not let that hope die until action is taken and we are living happily and healthfully in a clean, renewable energy run world.
We have all made a huge impact with every small and big action we take against climate change. Our momentum has grown and grown, but now that we can't be together, it may be difficult to see that these actions are still making an impact. Staying at home has reduced our carbon footprint in many ways. We are driving less and being less wasteful, and the earth is thanking us for it. Your actions are still important, and we need to continue to protect our planet. Thank you for being here today. Online activism is just as important as our strikes from the past. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Layla and Rebecca. Our next speaker is Anna Jones from Forward Wyoming at the University of Wyoming. And take it away, Anna.
Am I spotlighted?
You are.
Okay. So my name is Anna Jones, and I'm a junior at University of Wyoming. I'm a sociology major and an MS Queer Studies minor. I pride myself on my activism. I try to be the best I can be. I currently work at ARC Regional Services with adults with mental and developmental disabilities. I pride myself on my work, and I love my clients so much. So the reason I'm speaking with you guys today is because Forward Wyoming is doing a lot for climate change. We are trying to get out more people to vote. I believe that voting is one of the most important things that you can do, especially this coming election, as it is critical that we all go out and vote and get elected representatives that fight for climate change. Forward Wyoming does endorse the Earth Day today, as well as we endorse proper legislation that tackles climate change. Forward Wyoming has 3 goals. One of the goals is one of our most important, and I would encourage you to contact me via email, ajones64@uwyo.edu, or by phone, 307-287-5786. I would love if you could contact me. Our main goal this semester is that we're trying to get a voter mobilization training in effect. And so this will be around June, and we are encouraging anybody, even if you're not a student, to get involved in this voter mobilization training. I will be leading it, and I hope to see many of you there. Our second goal is that we're trying to get a voting center on campus. Now, voting centers are different than polling places. Places, you have to go to your specific precinct. As in voting centers, you can vote for any precinct from that one voting center. Now, this is critical to encourage youth voters to get out there and to encourage more youth voter turnout. Now, our third goal is trying to get voter registration on campus. And now this is obviously postponed because of the pandemic, but we are still trying to work towards having the county clerk and other people come onto campus in order to get more voter, young people voting. Now, my big ask today is that you participate in our voter mobilization training. It's very important that as voters, we are not only just voting, we are mobilized at the same time. Now, it's very important that we get more people involved in this. I've struggled a lot to get more people interested in my RSO, as I basically started it from nothing. But now that I have a platform to speak upon it, I would just encourage more people to contact me. I will have the organizers of this protest/march reach out to you with my information on voter mobilization training. Once again, it's important that we vote, but it's even more important that we're mobilized voters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. And next up is Cody DeBoer. Take it away, Cody.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to be talking fairly briefly about the state of wind in the United States. I was a wind turbine commissioner for a little bit over a year. So there's me on top of a GE 2.5 megawatt turbine. I believe that was in Iowa. But as you can see, these are our resources. So where the wind blows the strongest is mostly in the west. Wyoming, we know, is quite windy. We've got quite a good resource in the southeast of Wyoming, but the plains is really where it's blowing the strongest. And if you look at where we've been building wind turbines, it's right along the plains. So this has nothing to do with political parties. It has everything to do with where the wind is available. Texas is the #1 producer of wind in the United States at this point. And other states are following suit because they found out that it's actually profitable. Wind is currently the cheapest form of electricity that we have. And this has a lot of information on it, so bear with me for a second. I'll walk you through it. Down here we have coal, which is a obviously familiar form of electricity generation. And it has a range of price based on location and shipping costs for the resources. Just to clarify, this is an unsubsidized analysis, so this doesn't take into account any tax breaks or burdens that any specific resource would get. Wind is over here on the cheaper end of the spectrum. And these two vertical lines I've placed are for reference. So obviously most of us don't think of the cost of electricity by the megawatt hour. We generally get billed by kilowatt hours. And this line on the right is the average cost to the United States consumer for electricity. And this bar here is Wyoming. So obviously Wyoming has cheaper electricity than everybody else on average. And this diamond right here for wind, that is the estimated cost for offshore wind, which actually there's a lot of proposed projects along the East Coast. A lot of these states have programs in place to try and target goals for renewables. And these are fairly large projects. Right now, the entire state of Wyoming only has about 1,400 megawatts of wind capacity, and some of these projects are twice that. So there's a lot of wind energy in the pipeline and more to come. So wind is big and it's profitable for the utilities, so we can expect to see more of it. And if we have some free time, which it seems like we do, I'm going to share a poem. I'm not the Lorax. I can't speak for the trees, but if you will listen, I'd plead on my knees. The forest is dying, full of death and disease. I can't go a minute without hearing a sneeze, a cough, another tree fall. The old beautiful swamp was replaced with a wall. Economic expansion was their battle cry, but we just stood by as the EPA died. A planet full of people all looked away as a vast old growth forest was cut down to make way. My dear friends, please listen as you smash your eyes shut. The whole world is watching as you enlarge your gut. You've exploited the resources of your promised land, and now the bell tolls and the manna is sand. What will you do with your mountain of cash when you can't walk outside without a mask? Some people hate me, yes, hate me they do, but I'm not the Lorax. I'm one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Cody. All right. And next we have I think will be a very entertaining presentation from a person who knows quite a bit about the economic costs of climate. And one of the interesting things that I discovered about him is that he is a Nobel laureate right here in Laramie. And also a very talented musician who has performed in quite a few venues around the world. So welcome, Jason Sjogren.
Hi, thanks, Mike. Thanks for inviting me to participate. I balance the arts and the sciences in the sense that I've spent my whole professional career as an economist, which for many of you, sometimes you think that economist just worries about financial operations, but economists are more like applied philosophers, and we try to balance the good and bad with everything, and we attempt to advocate not necessarily for position A or position B, but to try to advocate for a clear understanding of why we are where we are and how we can move ahead into something that seems like a better outcome. And so a lot of my career has really been to take these problems that you were all thinking about and boil them down to the costs and benefits, which sounds a little bit rough for some, but with the idea that most economists don't believe that most people will do the right thing for the right reason at the right time all the time, and that people have other objectives and they have other goals. We published a paper that came out this last week that it said essentially that parents have a larger carbon footprint than the equivalent adult without kids. And you would think that being a parent would be transformational and it would have you looking to the future and have you thinking about, boy, I need to reduce my carbon footprint to leave a better future. But what ends up happening is you spend your time or your lack of time using carbon to make up for that difference. And this was run for Sweden, which of all the countries should be about as green as anybody could get. I've lived there now a couple different times for a couple different years, and I know they pride themselves in being green. And even when Swedish parents have to face these hard constraints about how to do things, then it really comes down to trying to be able to get the incentives lined up so that we just don't expect people to do the right thing at the right time. They've got a reason to do it. And really that's been the gist of my professional life, is to help politicians or to help policymakers and help decision makers figure out how to set incentives so that things work. Well, one of the big ones for climate change is cap and trade, which you've probably heard about, but many of you probably don't realize it was thought up by a professor here from the University of Wyoming who's still here. He's in his 80s. Thomas Crocker lives out in Centennial, Wyoming. And he thought about it back in the 60s. And that was a major breakthrough in terms of getting economics to the policy table for environmental problems, to stop treating the environment like a free good, to just stop thinking of it as our private waste dump, and to be able to actually put a price on it or charge it, or at least make people realize this is a scarce resource that has to be valued just like all the other scarce resources that have market prices. So you should take pride that Wyoming started the push on this nearly 50 some years ago with trying to understand how to do climate change policy in a way that you can get more bang for the buck, given that we have a lot of, nearly 7+ billion people on the planet who would love to, many of which who would love to have a lifestyle like we have. So that is a short explanation of how I've approached the problem that you guys are thinking about. And you guys will take over from me at some point, sooner rather than later. And the reason I do it that way as to advocate both sides is both sides have a point. One might be more right than the other, but my job is to make sure I hear them both as an economist. Now, Jay Sjogren as a person, that's a different thing. How I vote and how I vote with my feet and how I vote with my dollars and how I vote at the at the ballot box can be quite a bit different than the actual policy advocate that I become when I put my economist hat on. So I think you have to appreciate the difference between the two jobs that I have. So let me play a couple songs and then I'll get out of your hair, and please let me know if you can hear this okay. With me, I want to fall. With me, I fought to fall. Help me fall down. Tell me how far is far round. It only works in this world. Love only works, it only works in this world. You'll break me down, break me down, trip me. I wanna fly, trip me. I fought to fly. Help me stand down, tell me how low is low down. It only works in this world. Love only works, it only works in this world. You'll break me down, break me down. Help me stand down, tell me how low is low down. Help me fall down, tell me how far is far around. It only works in this world. Love only works, it only works in this world. It only works in this world. Break me down now, break me down. Even from here, above this world. Even from here, above this world. Even from here, above this world. You'll bring me down, bring me down. That song is called Works, and it was written for my father, who had a hard time expressing himself a lot of times, and we had lots of disagreements over whether or not climate change was real. And I spent a lot of my time trying to convince him that this was something that needed to be looked at. And he spent most of his time convincing me I was wrong, no matter where I was working. This song is called Swampland, and you can imagine. Elizabeth, well, today we wed, and tomorrow we must part. Mr. Wilson's vindicated war makes the swampland Bonaparte. Elizabeth, well, tonight we dance, and tomorrow we must die. By grace, by your hand, am I the only one who wonders what I find so remarkable? Those we leave behind, love can be so merciful to an unremarkable life like mine. Yeah, like mine. Elizabeth, well, today we vow, and tomorrow we must pray. By His grace, by His side, as we wash the blood away. Elizabeth, well, tonight we kiss, tomorrow we must kill. Bye-bye, hand in hand, am I the only one who wonders what I find so remarkable? All we leave behind can be merciful to an unremarkable man like me. Love can be so kind to an unremarkable life like mine. Never wanted to be anything like you see. Love can be so kind to an unremarkable life like mine. Yeah, like mine. Well, thank you. I don't know if you need me for any more, but I appreciate being able to talk to you about what it is that I do and spend my time doing, and I appreciate it. And if you ever got any questions about any of the costs and benefits, any of the incentive policies, just send me an email. I'm at the university, and I'm easy to find, and glad to talk about it. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Ed. We really appreciate that performance and especially the message that you able to provide to us. And look forward to seeing more of you.
Well, I look forward to seeing anybody.
That's right. This day and age, we are
Yeah, the favorite
Socialize
cartoon.
again, I know.
Yeah, the favorite cartoon I saw had a couple people looking at a chart and how they said, "Good, we're flattening the curve," and right behind them was this giant wave, tsunami wave that said climate change on it.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, we've shown that people can react when they need to, and the question is how to translate this into climate change. And all you guys with a lot more energy than me these days, go.
And we will do that. And Jay, that was a very important addition to the. We now know that we can react in the measures that are needed to an emergency, and if we can just pull up that same determination and commitment, we can address climate change also. Thank you. All right, take care. Okay, next up is we're going to have some updates from different environmental and climate groups in the state of Wyoming that are active. And first up is Rob Joyce from the Sierra Club.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Rob Joyce. I'm a conservation organizer for the Sierra Club Wyoming chapter, and I'm based here in Laramie. I just wanted to thank everyone for joining today, both the speakers and the people who might be watching out there, either on YouTube or Facebook. I get really inspired when we get to have these kind of intergenerational conversations, and we have really strong activist voices, and then voices like Jay who can kind of keep one foot in reality, and also intertwine music and art into these types of things. It makes it go a little further and have a lot more value, I think. For those that might be unfamiliar, the Sierra Club is one of the oldest and largest environmental groups in the country. The Wyoming chapter has been working for decades to make sure Wyoming's air and water stay clean and that our wildlife and wild places stay wild. To do that, we work with our members and volunteers across the state, along with our partners, to encourage responsible and equitable transition to renewable energy, protect wildlife habitat and support healthy wildlife management, and to safeguard our wild public lands. As we grapple with the climate crisis, a lot of the stuff that we've been talking today, the importance of protecting our lands has become increasingly clear. We're losing about a football field sized patch of nature every 30 seconds to industrialization. Development like extraction of fossil fuels on our public lands contributes around 20% of our country's greenhouse gas emissions. Because of this, the Sierra Club, with a diverse set of partners, is embarking on a new campaign to protect 30% of lands by 2030. This is something that we've been announcing during this Earth Week of Friday. Today is the last day of that week. This campaign stemmed out of world-renowned biologist E.O. Wilson's nature needs half idea, which is that we can avoid a mass extinction and curb some of the impacts of climate change by letting nature keep half of our land and seascapes. About half of Wyoming's public land, much of which remains undeveloped, which means that our state is actually going to be a significant piece of this effort. We all know we have the best national parks, in my opinion: Yellowstone, Grand Teton, as well as National Monument, Devil's Tower. But our Forest Service lands and our Bureau of Land Management lands and our state lands also kind of add up into this big patchwork of undeveloped and really important landscapes that are going to help us fight climate change and help wildlife survive. If you want to learn more about this, you can contact me at rob.joyce@sierraclub.org, or you can go to our website at sierraclub.org/Wyoming. Yeah, thanks again.
Thank you, Rob. Letting us know what Citizens Climate Lobby is up to is Madeline Dalrymple.
Hello. Let's see, am I muted? Nope.
I'm looking, there you are. Yes, there you are, Madeline.
Okay.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. It's so great to see everyone. Love the music, love the talks. I love the diversity that I'm seeing. So this is just fantastic. So I'm one of the co-leaders for Citizens Climate Lobby here in Laramie. Citizens Climate Lobby is a grassroots nonprofit organization, and we work on climate change. We have more than 190,000 supporters nationwide, and we're organized into chapters. We have chapters in Cody, Sheridan, Gillette, Cheyenne, Laramie, Casper. We have startups in Jackson and someplace else that I'm forgetting. So what do we do? Why are people interested in this? We are pushing for Congress to pass big national climate legislation, and we focus on that. The core values of Citizens Climate Lobby, this is why I really like it, is that we focus on the single most impactful solution to climate change. And we work with relationships. We're focused on relationships. We take the most generous approach to other people as possible. We believe that people are good. They're trying to do a good thing for the most part. And so we start our conversations from that place. We are nonpartisan. End all. We don't badmouth anyone. We're nonpartisan, and we have a conservative lobby. We have all sorts of folks. We have a diversity lobby. We have the global, actually worldwide people represented in our work. And then the other thing that we're focusing on too is that we empower everyone to exercise their personal power and in the politics, and we make an effort to elevate people whose votes may not have been heard in the past. So every year in June and July, volunteers from all across the nation, including Wyoming, we go to Washington, D.C., and we meet with our senators and our representatives. We meet with them or their office staff, and we discuss our concerns. We present our solution. We answer their questions. And we do that because we receive training beforehand on how to effectively lobby and engage our members of Congress. And of course, that allows us to effectively talk to other people, community leaders right here in Laramie and wherever we may live in our state. It's very empowering. It's actually thrilling work. So this year, of course, because of the coronavirus, we plan to meet virtually with our members of Congress in June. So no travel. So we're hoping that we'll have a lot more people from around the state that would be willing to join us in this lobby meeting. So in general, would you like to join us in this work? For more information, you can go to citizensclimatelobby.org and look around that website, see what you think. You can email me at laramiecccl@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madeline. CCL is doing important work to get what should be a very acceptable first step on climate action. We need to get that through now.
Mhm.
Next up is Kelly Wright. She is from the Wyoming Inland Ocean Coalition. And that's a very interesting name for a group.
Hi, everybody. I am Kelly Wright. I have the Wyoming chapter of the Inland Ocean Coalition. The Inland Ocean Coalition is based out of Boulder. It was formed in 2011 as the Colorado Ocean Coalition by Vicki Goldstein. And then there was an outpouring of people wanting to form their own chapters around the nation. So she started the Inland Ocean Coalition in 2017. We have about 15 chapters right now, one in Canada and the rest scattered throughout the US. we're not really around the coastal areas, we're in the inland. So that's our name, the Inland Ocean Coalition. The name came from, we believe that the ocean belongs to all of us. And regardless of where you live, we still need to take care of our ocean. So many of us are scuba divers. Many of us make many trips to the ocean because we just have that true love for it. But we do promote our in-state water health, other initiatives, but how it all ties into the ocean. So basically right now we have some of our programs are plastic pollution, watershed health, ocean protection, and we do this through collaboration with people around our region. We get in the schools and talk to school children. We talk to our legislators, we do op-ed pieces, but basically it's just engaging with the community, educating them on the need to protect the ocean. And Wyoming's pretty unique in just because we are a headwater state. We have the Great Divide coursing through the state of Wyoming. So we do have waters going to the Pacific and the Atlantic. So we're a huge state in the promotion of ocean health and watershed protection and all that, how it all ties together. We are looking at expanding even further. So if anybody would like to form their own chapter or be a part of my chapter, we would love to have you. We do a lot of activities, we do a lot of cleanups. But our main premise is getting out and talking to the legislators and educating the community and getting in the My email is wyomingoceancoalition@gmail.com, or you can give me a call. My number is area code 307-630-7260. You can also look at our programs and initiatives on our main webpage, which is the inlandoceancoalition.org.
Thank you so much, Kelly. We appreciate your work and you being on our event here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we're going to go to Rob Joyce again, who's going to give a brief update on the Alliance for Renewable Energy, which has done important work here in Laramie.
We had someone on to join to speak for the Alliance for Renewable Energy of Laramie, or R, but due to a miscommunication, they weren't able to join. So really, I just wanted to say that they're a really grassroots organization located in Laramie, working on promoting renewable energy. And if you want to learn more about them, go to Alliance Renewable Energy of Laramie on Facebook or Instagram to learn more about those efforts.
Cool, thank you, Rob. Let me add that ARE was instrumental in the efforts of to get Laramie to the city of Laramie to commit to becoming carbon neutral. That's something that Layla Johnson had mentioned earlier, and the group is very inclusive and very active. So if you're interested in joining that, please visit that Facebook page. And I'm going to let you all know about Wyoming Climate Activists. We're a pretty new group that just started July 1st of last year. In our first year, we have sponsored what was the very first Wyoming Climate Forum. It was held in September in Laramie and was very well attended, and I think helped to spur a lot of people to become more involved in climate activism. And one of the other things that we do and have not done with the COVID crisis is weekly climate strikes every Friday. And a lot of us are really looking forward to this COVID crisis going away so that we can get back to raising awareness for people. The second annual Wyoming Climate Forum is going to be it's going to be at the end of September, beginning of October. And I hope you'll look for information on that on Facebook. You can look for Wyoming Climate Activists on Facebook. And we also have a website. It's www.atacc.us. And if you'd like to email and become more involved with Wyoming climate activists, you can email info@atacc.org. And Kelly Wright would like to come back on, and because we are actually well ahead of schedule, I'm going to let her do that.
Well, thank you. I actually wanted to add, here in Cheyenne, we are promoting the Sustainable Shopping Initiative, which is the single-use plastic bag ban. I just want to throw that out there because that'll lead into our city councilman who will be joining us later. He's one of our co-sponsors.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We are a little bit ahead of schedule. I want to see if Natalie Macker has arrived yet. She has. I think I just saw her. Yes.
I did. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for being here. And I'm going to turn this over to Rob now because I think we have all of our community representatives on. And Rob, I'll
Yeah.
take it away.
All right, thanks. Thanks everyone who's presented so far. We have a number of elected officials from all across the state on the call. We're now going to enter our town hall section where folks on the call can ask questions related to all things climate so that we can really have a conversation here, which is something really unique to Wyoming. I think that, you know, we all kind of know each other. Our communities are very similar, and it's rare that you don't know someone from almost every single town. On the call, we have Natalia Macker, Teton County Commissioner, Brian Harrington, Laramie City Council member, Pete Laybourne from Cheyenne, he's a Cheyenne City Council member, Mike Yen, who's a Wyoming State Representative, and Missy White, who's a Lander City Council member. So to start things off, I just kind of wanted to let everyone introduce themselves and to go around and say, maybe just a softball question to start off with is, how are you celebrating Earth Week in your communities? So maybe Natalia can start that.
Hi, sure. Natalia Macker, and I am on the county commission in Teton County. And you know, the main celebrations I've been seeing happening in our community this week, which includes my son's virtual kindergarten class, it's folks going out and picking up trash. We typically have a big community-wide spring cleanup, and we are not doing that because of health concerns. And so folks have dispersed themselves and have been out doing that. And I think the other conversation that's been happening that's been really great, given the current context, is an even greater appreciation for the opportunity to spend time outside and just experiencing the natural world with loved ones, maybe getting to see a friend out socially distanced on the trail, and knowing that that resource is available for everyone.
Thank you, Natalie.
Brian, do you want to go next?
Sure, thanks, Rob. I would say maybe the way I'm gonna enjoy Earth Week this week. We got rained out of a cleanup yesterday, so we're gonna try to, well, sort of like rain snowed out of the cleanup. We're gonna hit that this weekend, and then I think the city will. We generally, similar to Jackson, we host a community cleanup day every year. This year we are changing the plan to go for the entire month of May, and the city will be hosting challenges. So if you don't see your council member challenging other people, give them a call and make sure they're cleaning up the town too. So I'll be challenging everybody I can. So if we're friends on Instagram, get ready because it's coming for you.
Cool. I'm looking forward to that challenge coming through.
Rob, for sure.
Pete Laybourne, how's it in Cheyenne?
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I don't have my photo on, but I did want to tell everyone about what we have accomplished here in Cheyenne related to Earth Day. 30 years ago, we began on our little creek here on the west side of town with a cleanup and the beginnings of what became the Greater Cheyenne Greenway System, which is a non-motorized path system that goes through 37 miles of the city of Cheyenne now. It is pretty well from east to west and north to south. We are now looking at new opportunities to connect to new parklands we have on the east side of town. So the idea being that we have the ability for people to get to work or recreate or relax. They can do that on the path system. Another element of all of that was our efforts to improve our creek that flows through town and the watershed above it, which goes quite a ways to the west. It's a pretty big watershed. It incorporates our water system and our water treatment system. And over the years, we've done a lot of work to improve the creek. And really, it wasn't local so much, although we do programs with like our Rotary Club to encourage people to be careful about what they put down the drain and be aware of where it all goes. But basically, it was the Clean Water Act that made the difference. When I was a young man, 14 years old, we had a reservoir and be aware of where west of Cheyenne. Clean Water Act made the difference. When I was a young man, can you hear me?
Yes, sorry for the interruption, Pete. Go ahead.
So when I was 14, I went with my brother out near our refinery and observed the Hereford Reservoir number 1 on fire. It was a big flame from the waste that came from the refinery, and it was very, very important moment in my life. So I've been interested in cleaning up the creek ever since. It is, we are now in a joint project with our water board, the Laramie County Conservation District, and the city of Cheyenne. And we're going to be doing a major rehabilitation of the upper stretch of our creek from Happy Jack Road. So it's been a long haul, but we're definitely progressing. But more than anything else, I want to tell the listeners about what we have here in Cheyenne that has such great statewide significance and is so important in worldwide analysis of the climate crisis. And that is what's known as the NCAR UCAR facility west of Cheyenne on Happy Jack Road. It's pretty easy to find. There's big signs off the interstate that'll direct you to it. So what it is basically is a international, one of the largest and most sophisticated computers in the world. There are 2 arms of it. One is called the Wyoming and one is the Cheyenne. And so all sorts of scientists from around the world utilize that facility remotely. And I would urge everyone to look at NCAR and UCAR and note that there's a great library there of all incredible sorts of information about what these scientists have determined in regard to our future. And it can be pretty daunting. What's particularly significant about all this is that I've been to both of the ribbon cuttings out at that facility. The state of Wyoming invested tens of millions of dollars in that. It was quite a coup when it was recruited to the state of Wyoming. The original facility is in Boulder, Colorado, and they just really couldn't expand on site. So they built this adjunct facility. And it was really fascinating to see the elected officials of the city, the state, and the officials of the university really in ecstasy over the fact that we now had such a sophisticated and important facility, which has attracted other types of facilities in the vicinity that with Microsoft. But I just want to make the point that there's great excitement in the Wyoming legislature when they cut the ribbon. There is zero interest in learning what our university, the scientists that utilize that facility from the university, as well as universities around the country and around the world, that absolutely conclusively prove that we are in a ever accelerating crisis of proportions that are hard to even grasp, as we're seeing right now in the tornadoes in southern United States. So I just want to make people aware of that, and I would urge anyone to look at those sites and see what Kelly here just texted, I guess, an address to that site. But if you're, and they have a really fantastic visitor center. It's free. It's got some great displays. It has some live staff there that are glad to answer any of your questions. It's open during working hours, and it's a very important facility here in the state of Wyoming that I think we have to start bringing that data and that information from that facility to the leadership of the Wyoming legislature, because I can tell you as a elder, things have changed dramatically in Wyoming and that's ever accelerating. So I'm really glad to be invited to this. I really appreciate it. And I'd be glad to visit with anyone. I'm readily available through the city of Cheyenne. I'm hopeful that we can work with Kelly here shortly on the plastic bag issue. But this is, I hope that the young people that are listening understand that it's on their shoulders. I just honestly believe we elders have failed, and it's really up to those people who are going to be living and experiencing this incredible problem, just as we're seeing around the world with the climate strikes. Wyoming needs to step up. The deniers are totally delusional, and anyone who's lived here for a while can tell what's happened to our forests, to our rangelands, the invasive species, and it's ever accelerating. So thank you so much for inviting me, and I look forward to any future participation I might be able to take part in, and make sure to look at and understand NCAR, and that's NCAR, and UCAR, UCAR. That facility is in our state and it's doing very important work. And yet the facts that they produce are not making an impact on the people that funded that operation and that are part of our university to be educating people about this incredibly dangerous crisis. So again, thank you so much. And I'll be listening to the other presenters.
Thank you, Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. I just wanted to follow up and say that website that Councilman Laybourne was talking about is nwcs.ucar.edu. If you want to check out what Councilman Laybourne was speaking about there. I also know between Laramie and Cheyenne, I think there's some wind turbines being repowered. So maybe Cody can talk about that later. Missy White, council member from Lander. I know Fremont County has been hit particularly hard with the COVID virus. Have you been able to celebrate Earth Week in your community at all?
We didn't have anything formally planned. We'll move that little dialogue box. But yeah, we've been hit hard by COVID-19, but folks are certainly taking advantage of mostly better weather this week and getting out, biking, hiking, climbing, just being able to be outside and celebrating that. A few folks have, like others have commented, taken on themselves to do a little bit of cleanup. One person posted a picture of what he cleaned up at one of the popular trailhead parking lots, which was both awesome that he did and rather shocking that he picked up quite that amount. That was shame on us, I guess. Good on him and shame on us that all that was out there. So no, not a whole lot specifically for Earth Day, Earth Week itself, but there are a number of really strong projects happening, including, if folks have not checked out the Paposia Conservation District Healthy Rivers Initiative, please check that out. That's addressing concerns about the Middle Fork of the Paposia. That's our water source here in Lander, and then of course continues on both up and downstream for wildlife habitat, for irrigation, agricultural uses, etc. And a really cool, not just the results, but how it's been done, I think is a really fabulously Wyoming way. It's done voluntarily. It's done across a very wide section of stakeholder groups, and it's a pretty neat example of people coming together by choice to solve big problems and make a big difference for it. So I'm really proud of the work they're doing for that.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, it's important to recognize that even though we're here celebrating Earth Week and talking about climate change, that obviously the COVID crisis is still happening. And your city council members are really great people to reach out to if you're interested in doing volunteer work or mutual aid work in your communities. So I certainly encourage that as well as getting involved in some of the climate actions that we're talking about. Last is Representative Mike Yin from Teton County. Have you been able to, you're already outside. That's awesome.
Thanks, Robert. Thank you for organizing this, Mike. And I really appreciate being invited to be on this panel. And I know that organizing is basically, it's been kind of different these last couple of weeks, unfortunately. But I'm very happy that you guys are doing it. I'm very happy to see all the activists that are on this call, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing. When it comes to stuff like the plastic bag ban, that was one of the first things that I worked on in town before I became an elected official. And so I think those are good tasks for something all over Wyoming, and I'm glad that you guys are working on that. And I hope to see you guys that aren't elected officials on the ballot someday. So that's really exciting. I'm a state representative. I represent essentially the town of Jackson. That's my district is most of the town of Jackson. And the way that I'm celebrating Earth Week, I think this weekend it will be going outside. Most of this week has been preparing for discussions about what happens around our legislative session with regards to COVID. So instead of that, I'm going to give myself a mental break and use some of our great public lands and enjoy it this weekend. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I appreciate you all joining our call. It's really important. So now I wanted to open it up for questions for people who are on the Zoom call. If you're watching either on Facebook or on YouTube, feel free to type a question into the comment box. I have YouTube up in particular. You can type a question there and I can pose it to the group. We have a number of young people on the call. I think some of them would like to maybe start with a question or two.
What actions are each of your communities doing to address climate change issues?
Brian, do you want to start off with that?
Sure, happy to hop in. Yeah, that is a great question, and I think really boils down to the real focus of this whole conversation. So thank you for that. I've been on council here in Laramie since January of last year, and in that time, we have continued quite a bit of the progress of the previous councils, I would say, and really used their forward thinking to propel ourselves onto some newer projects, some maybe more significant projects, several of which are things that have occurred in other Wyoming communities, most notably in the town of Jackson and Teton County. Earlier this year, we had a vote to initiate as Layla mentioned earlier, we had a vote to really begin the process of eliminating plastic bags in Laramie. Our hope is that by utilizing a really robust education campaign, that without being heavy-handed, we can really reduce the amount of plastic bags used. If that's not the case, then we'll start looking at fee structures and things like that, and sort of charting more closely to the way Jackson implemented the ban that they now have. And then I think most recently and importantly, we have passed an intention to be net zero emissions by 2050, with really the lion's share of that reduction being in the next 10 years. So I think when you originally look at the ordinance, you'll see it sort of split into two pieces. The first is sort of the municipal emissions. That's our fire and police and municipal buildings. Our rec center takes a notable amount of power to just keep the lights on and it warm. So those are more easily controlled by our city council. So those you'll see a more substantial and maybe lofty goal at the beginning. Those things are already entering, we're in the budget process right now. Those things are already entering our budget processes. We're seeing things, requests from staff to do things like include battery packs in police cruisers so that they aren't forced to leave them idling all day. We're starting to look at some pretty substantial investment right up front, with a 50% reduction by 2030 and 90% by 2040. And then obviously the remaining 10% in the next 10 years. And those numbers are a little bit smaller when you look at the citywide. So asking all of you to join us and reduce your own emissions. Those come in at 30% by 2030 and then 70% by 2040, with that last 30% in the last 10 years. So, I started council with my first thing I did was meet with the city manager with like a list of 40 things on a spreadsheet that I was like, I'm gonna get all this done. And she sort of like laughed for a second and said like, yeah, maybe a couple. So I personally feel like really fortunate at this point to have been able to work on some of these bigger projects. So I would say those are the bigger things that the city of Laramie has done in the last 18 months or so.
Thanks, Brian. I wanted to give a little bit of time. I saw Ed Consul from the Alliance for Renewable Energy of Laramie joined, who was not on the call. Ed, did you want to add anything to kind of ours work in that resolution? If you can unmute yourself.
All right. Did you unmute me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Go ahead, Ed.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry about the mix-up. I was watching the whole thing on YouTube and thought that's how I was supposed to interact with everything. So a little bit of confusion there. Let me add a few things about R. R is the Alliance for Renewable Energy in Laramie, and I'm Ed Consul, and I'm currently the vice president. Monica Leininger from the Powder River Basin Resource Council started our organization. Everyone's not quite sure because we kind of grew into a full organization, but it was about 18 months ago. And since then, what we've been working on are a number of programs that we've been presenting about the strategies and the things that other cities, counties, and states are doing. We got a lot of our material from Utah because they have a very strong program. They're a Rocky Mountain Power Company customer, and they're very strong into the Blue Sky grant program, which we've been also pushing, and that Laramie has now made some applications for. What our group's been doing is presenting to various groups. We presented to the Environmental Advisory Committee. We presented several times to Laramie City Council. We've presented to the Airport Board. We presented at the Lander Climate Action Series a month or two ago, and we had about 150 attendees for that. And we presented at Mike's Wyoming Climate Forum last September, and that had about 250 people. So we're reaching quite a few people. The results, Brian mentioned a little bit of this, but to give you an idea how things happened, we did a bunch of presentations, like I said, to the EAC, the Advisory Committee, and to the City Council. And as a result, the Environmental Advisory Committee outlined a proposal for reaching carbon neutrality by 2050. We only had a couple of weeks to actually get this all drafted and presented. EAC did it with a subcommittee and then the full committee, and then presented to a City Council. And this is how it happened, and it was really impressive to see the support for this. On February 6th, EAC voted unanimously to present a proposal to City Council. Tuesday, February 25th, City Council devoted their entire work session that evening to discussing the report. And the next Tuesday, March 3rd, City Council voted unanimously to adopt it. And the other good thing that's come out of this to show that a City Council and the City Manager's Office are serious about this. If you want to read about it, the April 12th edition of the Boomerang reported in detail on the city's application for a Blue Sky grant. And if I remember correctly, it was for a $120,000 grant to put solar panels on the Community Rec Center and the Laramie Ice Event Center. So we are getting some things moving. And while I've got your attention, I wanted to mention our thing coming up next Wednesday, the 29th, from 5:30 to 6:30. We're going to have we're interested in bulk buy for solar, to start getting more solar on houses in Laramie. And we're going to have Deidre McNabb, who's been working with us down in Colorado, presenting. And like I said, this will be on the 29th. You can get information or register on our Facebook page. And the best way to find that is search Facebook for the Alliance for Renewable Energy in Laramie, or look at We ARE Laramie, and that's all one word, and that'll give you information, a chance to register, and everything. Thanks for the opportunity to get back in. I kind of missed the connection here, so thanks, Rob and Mike.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah, that was my fault on the miscommunication side of things. There's too many wheels turning in the Zoom age, I think. I wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity for folks from Lander, Cheyenne, and Teton County to talk about what they're doing to address climate change, if you'd like. If there's anything to expand from your original comments, go ahead.
Sure. This is Commissioner Macker, and Representative Yen and I might tag team a little bit on responding, but I will share into the Zoom chat a link for an organization called Energy Conservation Works, which is a really unique partnership that was established a number of years ago between the town of Jackson, Teton County, and Lower Valley Energy, who provides all of our energy here, and also community members who are on that board. And it's a tripartite board that's funded partially by the county, partially by the town, and then by Lower Valley Energy, and which is a co-op. And through we set a community goal of keeping emissions below a certain threshold. I'm trying to find the numbers, and keeping our energy usage below a certain threshold, partially for economics, because if we hit a certain mark, our energy bills were going to go up, as a community. And so we wanted to stay below that to keep everyone's energy bills down. And what it's been very successful, a lot of proactive programs, and most recently, a really strong push for green power, and the ability for people to sign up for green power, and including getting a number of commercial entities, including the building that's in my backdrop, which is our Center for the Arts, which is where I work when I'm not at the county. I run a small nonprofit professional theater there. And so that building runs on green power. Our airport runs on green power. Jackson Hole Mountain Resort is running on green power. And so we are collectively, through Energy Conservation Works, trying to lower that footprint. We also have had SPET funded projects, so sales tax funded projects that have been operated through Energy Conservation Works that work on things like solar panels. It's helped facilitate work for EV buses and other efforts. We also did an LED lighting project for some public buildings, but also giving away LED bulbs within the community. And it's been really, you know, I wouldn't call them an advocacy group. It's just been a really interesting partnership to have a power company be part of that effort. And so I would encourage folks to look at that, because I think when you get the partners at the table from the beginning and can generate the buy-in for the goals that you have at the beginning, and then can link it to economic community outcomes that are positive for everyone, that you create an opportunity to expand. There's a lot, if you go into the website, you can see a lot of the different things. And I would just say, as a government entity, the thing that we've been talking about the most, we have a county operations sustainability plan, but we've really been talking recently about getting our own house in order, and what that means from the procurement side and how we're spending public funds, down to how we function, what fertilizers we are or are not using with our Parks and Rec department, how we are making choices in the way that we are operating, that are living our values and living the community's values with the community's money. And I'll see Representative Yen maybe wants to talk about Road to Zero Waste and some other things we have going on.
Sure. Thank you, County Commissioner. The Road to Zero Waste is a program that Teton County and the town of Jackson implemented up the joint resolution in 2014, I believe, because what we started doing was we actually started shipping our trash to Idaho. And so just as, not necessarily just because of economic costs, but because it's the right thing to do, we started a program to set our trajectory to one where we don't send anything to a landfill. So sending stuff to the landfill to Idaho means not only is it using landfill space, it's a lot of commute time for a huge truck to drive over Teton Pass, carrying a huge load of trash that burns fuel for trash, essentially. And so that Road to Zero Waste has been going very, very well. We are pretty much on track with our first goal, which I think starts for 60% diversion by 2030. And what that entails is it's a lot of public outreach on the part of the integrated solid waste and recycling department, as well as, you know, making it as easy as possible for people to recycle, reuse, compost, and also partnering with not just outreach to people, but outreach to businesses, because businesses also have a large output. And if you partner with businesses, you can get that buy-in early on, and the businesses themselves can promote themselves as one that is a zero waste business, which is good for them as well. So those are some of the things that we do. On a state level, it becomes a little harder because of our number one industry being minerals. So there are things that we try to work on that department, but I think local levels are where we can make a big difference right now.
And I will, the last thing I'll just add, and I'll just put the link in the chat, is our lodging tax board, our travel and tourism board, is really working on how we are messaging to our visitors so that we can make sure that they understand what they're doing when they come here, but also use their visit here as an opportunity to educate and hopefully teach them things to take back to their home community. I was about to say end of report because I'm so used to the pandemic meetings where we give updates and then say end of report. I didn't say it though.
Thanks for that update. I actually interned for Teton County Integrated Solid Waste and Recycling for a few summers. And I suggest anyone going through Jackson on their way to the Tetons, go check out the recycling facility if you want to nerd out for a little bit on that stuff. Lander or Cheyenne, do you have anything that you want to add to that question?
This is Missy from Lander. I guess I'd say more of our local efforts are being done by private groups and not through council per se, but we do have a number of very passionate groups trying to make a difference here in town. And someone else mentioned having presented to the Lander Climate Action Series group that has really taken off this spring. They did a four series meeting. They were all really well attended and are continuing working groups from that. We've had for a number of years a really active and passionate group of local food producers, which is fantastic, from fruits and vegetables, homemade kinds of things, meat production. Riverton is likewise really trying to emphasize that as well, which, again, that the more locally we can eat, the better it is all around for sure. Wishing we had the awesome recycling center that Jackson has. We don't have that. That's a bit of a sore spot. Love to have that. I think there is interest for us trying to get some of our municipal buildings on, at least to some extent, some solar power. It's not necessarily across the board motivated by a sense of urgency for climate change, but folks see it as a way of being more frugal with our dollars, that after a certain time point, then we start getting free energy. Either way, I think that's still a win for that. Right now, our desire to do that is much as there are a number who would like to see that happen, it still requires a match from the local budget. And right now, that's just not something we have, unfortunately, as our budgets are taking a big old hit from COVID-19. So might have to pause on that, but doesn't mean it's gone. It's just slowed.
Thanks. Yeah, that all sounds great. Yeah, not everyone has the resources to get a giant recycling facility, but I think all of us in our communities can do our part. Councilman Laybourne, did you want to add anything before we moved on to the next question? We have about 8 minutes left, actually. We were ahead of time, but now it's catching up to us.
I'm not sure Councilor Laybourne's still on.
Okay. Well, Sam or Aru, you haven't had a chance to speak yet. Did you want to ask our final question for the afternoon or for the evening now?
Yeah, I can ask a question. I was wondering how can the cities or our community as a whole support creating green jobs for young people in Wyoming?
Could I just ask, is there a specific sector in green jobs that you want to talk about, or just generally? Because I could talk about a few different things, which I'm happy to do.
Yeah, whatever applies to your community would work.
Well, it's not a cop-out answer, but the answer I would give from at least the discussions that we've started having internally at the county is that we want every job to be a green job, and that we want everyone to see what they're doing in their component. I've spoken like a true politician. I see your face, Brian. We want everyone to feel like they are doing their part within their department, whatever their job is, to conserve resources and participate in that mission. And I think that was, it took us a while to come to that, because we had tried talking about some really specific things that would maybe be higher impact individually. But I think incorporating operationally that mindset into everything that we're doing has meant a lot to us on the facility side and how we run our facilities, and what it means to have a green job, which I think means different things to different people. I would also say here that we see a lot, because we have so many, I think all over Wyoming, so many folks working very closely with our natural resources as land managers or biologists, and that they are seeing some of the frontline impacts of climate change on their work, and kind of making sure that the right dialogues are happening there, so that we're making the connections between the decision we might make to buy which vehicle we choose to buy for some county operation and the migration corridors that are being managed by our land managers.
I would add, maybe from my perspective, I think to Commissioner Macker's point earlier of being good stewards of public funds, I think the more of that a city or a county or a state for that matter is utilizing in a maybe the more traditional green job sort of idea. You know, governments spend considerable amounts of money on building and things like that. So if we're using that in that direction, that really kickstarts an industry and allows them to gain the expertise that they might need to continue doing those sort of projects at a larger scale, or for the public individually rather than collectively.
You just reminded me of something, if I could say one more comment. So we, for example, we had an affordable housing project recently, and one of our respondents, it was an RFP that we put out, would have built a passive housing project. We ended up, in this instance, not selecting that project from the RFP, but it spurred a really exciting conversation about what we might put into future RFPs and what we might require, to that exact point of, you know, building a building that our metrics of how much something costs might not be the best metric to always use, and making sure that we're having the opportunity to weigh things with other metrics that are values centered and that have longevity financially with where we are headed.
Awesome, thank you. Representative Yin, I know that the state has been, you know, trying to broaden our revenue streams a little bit. Is there anything on the horizon, and you know, maybe expanding a little bit into things like utility scale solar and wind, which, you know, definitely need to be sited correctly and things like that, but do bring jobs into the state? Is there anything on the horizon for post-COVID days?
Yeah, I think the state will definitely be going through a very probably pretty difficult transition period, but what it will do is give opportunity for Wyoming to see what its future course looks like. And so that what I'd like to see is see that economy shift, right? So while we are a big energy producer, they aren't necessarily green energies in the biggest sectors. So there is definitely space for movement there. I think, as mentioned before, we are a very windy state, and many of you are well aware of that. And so there's lots of opportunity for the future there. And I think that comes into light for what happens in the state level, because the state sets the essentially governing policy for what that trajectory looks like. So the market can do some shifting, and so can private industry, but the state really sets the broad strokes, the broad brush strokes courses of how that looks like. So I think that there will be change, and it will be difficult for a lot of people, but I think we can find a way to make a lot of the jobs that people can transition to green jobs. And I think because our number 2 industry is tourism rec, that also has a big place in educating the rest of the country and all the visitors that come through where each of us live, what it looks like to have pristine public lands and how to keep it that way, and how to send people home with the idea that, yes, they want those kinds of places and where they live too. So I think those are some big opportunities for a state going forward, and I will be pushing for that. It'll be interesting to see how other state representatives also feel, but that the way that happens is at the ballot box and who runs. So it's important to stay active as activists and make sure that those issues get heard as well, so we hear them.
I think that's a perfect end to our meeting. Unless Missy, did you want to add anything on the green jobs?
I was just thinking, hearing some of the ideas that folks have, that it would be really nice if some of these fields were job training kinds of things that could be done at the Job Corps site in Riverton. So if we're getting ready to move forward with, say, a utility scale solar or wind energy, then it sure would be neat to be able to train folks there and then hopefully have them be working in those fields.
Absolutely.
Yeah, some planning would be great. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Mike's gonna just take us out here. This was such a great event, and I really appreciate everyone who joined. Mike, you want to finish this thing off?
Okay. Thank you, Rob, and all of the town hall participants and everyone online viewing this. We appreciate your attention, and we appreciate your commitment to taking action on climate change. Wyoming climate activists believe that we need to keep this in the conversation constantly, even though COVID-19 is distracting us now from some of the actions we need to take. It is also providing us an opportunity to change our course. We've now realized that we have the power to take dramatic action, and if we can focus that on the climate issue to a degree, I think we have there's promise that we can get a handle on it. I wanted to share very quickly some of the links that that people mentioned during the meeting, and I'll put that up briefly. At the bottom there is the registration for the bulk buy webinar that ARE is putting on. Working from the bottom up, that's a link for the Wyoming climate activists if you're interested in becoming involved. citizensclimatelobby.org, that computer center in between Cheyenne and Laramie, it's a link for that. And then the Jackson Hole Road to Zero Waste and Energy Conservation. So jot those down. And so that's it. I hope that this has been informative and will motivate people to get involved. And thank you to everyone for joining.
Thanks.
Thanks for putting this together, and everyone for attending.
Thanks, it was great.
Thank you.
I've stopped the live stream, so now wrap up. And I can, thank all you and individually, very much appreciate your being involved, and look forward to future action. Probably be reaching out to almost all of you as the Wyoming Climate Forum, tentatively October 3rd. The plans for it solidify. We'll reach out and hope to have involvement from a large number of the people that were involved tonight or this afternoon. So thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. Take care all.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you.